This summer's journey at First Church has been one I have been extremely grateful for, even in the midst of the world falling apart around us. We are nearing the conclusion of the summer series, and as Reverend Chad said at the beginning, we are focusing this morning on three of my favorite, very easy and fun topics: fear, anger, and anxiety. That's what happens when you do the pastoral care track in divinity school. Even though we knew coming into this summer that all was not well with the world, we were still able to cling to hope. It had been a rough fall, a really hard winter, and it felt like the spring had brought some relief. We had no idea, though, that the events of the first week of June would set a course we could not have imagined. A trajectory that would require us to be brave enough to wade into the deep end of life. And while the storms of life have descended on us, especially in Los Angeles, thankfully, each Sunday that we spend together has been like a shelter in a storm. These Sundays have allowed us to breathe, to pray, to sing, to cry, and to hope together. And we are thankful because this is a summer when we absolutely have to find hope, not only for ourselves, but we also have to continue becoming hope for our neighbors. If there is one thing in this life we can be sure of, it is that change is constant. Even when we think we know the trajectory of a period of time in our life, only occasionally does it unfold as we imagine. Sometimes it is better than we could have ever dreamed. Other times we find ourselves in places that are quite truthfully more like nightmares than dreams. The best laid plans do not always come to fruition, and sometimes we find ourselves with this growing sense of anxiety, even if we are unaware of what is happening deep within us. Anxiety is something that some of us know all too well. It is simply part of who we are, and we experience it day in and day out. Others of us develop situational anxiety, which is generated from circumstances occurring around us. Almost all of us have trouble defining anxiety. This is especially difficult if we have not previously experienced it consciously. So how can we learn to listen to our bodies, our minds, and our hearts that let us know something is not right? Have you ever noticed how children are readily able to access their emotions in the early years of their lives? We have often heard that their emotional maturity has not yet fully developed, which is just another way of saying they have not yet learned how to stifle and hide their emotions. When my son was very young, he would say to me often, "Mama, quit aggrating me." I've never figured out exactly what aggrating meant, but he understood it, and so did I. And I think it is fair to say, in the last 8 months, I have been aggered constantly. Perhaps Agard is somehow somewhere in between anxiety and anger. Or perhaps it is a combination of the two. It is hard to figure out in times like these how to escape being anxious and angry and find a way to live peacefully, even as we work so hard to enact change. The truth is, for most of us, no one taught us to understand the anxiety and anger that simply come into everyone's life. We did not learn how to effectively deal with anxiety and angry feelings. It is a rare family that carefully and intentionally provides good anger management training for their children, as they find ways to also help their children not be consumed by anxiety. That certainly was not happening at my house growing up. You could be a lot of things in my family, but angry was not one of them. So I grew up afraid of anger, which created fertile ground for the anxiety I came to feel around conflict. I did not know how to be angry. When I first went to therapy in my mid-30s, the therapist asked, "How do you do anger?" The answer was easy. I told her, "I don't do anger." And she told me, "We're going to need to unpack that." Well, I've been unpacking that for years. And yet, just hearing Reverend Chad read the story from the gospel today made me uncomfortable. I still have a lot of work to do because the world we live in right now needs us to understand anger and the anxiety it produces. We can learn a lot from the hellacious time Jesus lived in because it was an angry time in the world. Perhaps like me, you can imagine what it felt like to be in that crowd as the anger rose and the people became unhinged. Maybe you too can feel the anxiety rising in those who followed Jesus and those who were hoping Jesus would make all of the hell that surrounded them stop. That story is only one of many, because the Bible is filled with stories of anger, beginning with Cain and Abel in the Hebrew Bible and ending with Peter and Paul in the New Testament. And we also have the narratives of the anger of Jesus at the wrongs inflicted upon innocent people. We do not know what to do with the anger that surrounds us. And we do not know what to do with the anger that is within us. While anger can make us feel powerful and in control in the moment, we often regret how we are expressing it or reacting to it. And while right now it feels more acceptable to be angry with society at large, we may also be finding this anger and conflict bleeding over into relationships that are really important to us. We have been culturally conditioned to believe that anger is always destructive. Recent events have continued and cemented that conditioning in many of our minds. Yet you have heard me say before, what if we are wrong? What if the capacity for anger is part of our creation in the image of God? What if anger is something that has a positive purpose in our lives? I continue to learn that so much of our anger is first of all centered around ourselves and God. Some of us are frustrated and angry with ourselves for mistakes, weaknesses, and other failures, both real and imagined. Most of us have high expectations for ourselves, and when we fall short, it's easy to feel threatened by our own actions and then become angry with ourselves. We may accept the guilt or even shame, or we may hide from our own accountability by blaming others. In either case, we know down deep that we are angry with who we are. Could it be that reimagining anger and our relationship to God offers ways for us to deal with this anger so that it does not leak out on other people, particularly those we love? Could we possibly learn how to understand anger at ourselves, how to change these self-defeating patterns of behavior, and how to accept God's unconditional love for us, no matter what? In the letter to the Ephesians that Reverend Chad read to us, we can know the early church was not only surrounded by anger, anxiety, and destruction. They were also learning that anger could be used for good. For so long, they had had the boot of power on their throats. And now they had to find a new way, a healthy way to respond. Go ahead and be angry, the writer says. You do well to be angry, but do not use your anger and fuel for revenge. And don't stay angry. Don't go to bed angry. And the most important part, don't give anyone or anything that kind of foothold in your life. There's a lot to be angry about right now. We do not have to go and look for it. We can just open our phone. And while that is true, we have a choice these days. We can keep scrolling on our phones. We can keep sharing and writing posts about the idiocy and idolatry of those who are now making the decisions about our country and our world. Or we can decide to do the work in order to consciously understand our own anger. Then we can decide to use it in the right ways. We can decide to look squarely at our anxieties as we take care of each other and our neighbors whose anxiety and anger and fear are fully valid in this moment. Yesterday, I didn't get to come, but I've seen the pictures, and my husband told me that so many of you came for the garden work day, and you spent a huge part of your Saturday digging in the dirt. What a wonderful way to productively work out your anger and plant some of that anxiety in the soil, the soil that will be redeemed and will bring forth not only food, but goodness and grace and love and friendship. This work is the antidote to our times. This work is what will make a difference right now. This work is what will save us. And as it saves us, it will feed so many hearts and minds and bodies. And in the days ahead, we will come to know this time and this place as pure gift. We are so fortunate to be learning how to do life together in this time and in this place. May it continue to be so. Amen.